Primetime local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
3 more Saskatchewan residents who tested positive for COVID-19 have died. They were all in the Saskatoon region and were in the 30 to 39 age zone, as well as the 60 to 69 and 80 plus age zone. There are 147 new cases, including 9 in the Northwest. The Northwest 2 subzone, which is the immediate Lloydminster area, has 4 new cases and 189 active cases. 151 people are in hospital, including 8 in the Northwest. 32 people are in intensive care, 2 of those are in the Northwest. 378 more people have recovered. COVID-19 has seen a drastic change in the province of Alberta when it comes to businesses, healthcare, and the economy. Connor Chan chats with the MLA for more on what else has happened this year in the constituency.
Well, joining us here is Garth Rosewell, the MLA for Vermillion, Lloydminster, Wainwright. Mr. Rosewell, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Now, of course, we are wrapping up the year of 2020. It's been a bit of an interesting year, of course, with COVID. But
yes,
let's talk about some of the highlights for, from your end with the from in your constituency for the Vermillion, Lloydminster, Wainwright area. So, what are some of those highlights that you want to share with us for 2020 there?
Yeah, well, just from a perspective of getting work done, we passed, or we will have dealt with 58 bills throughout this year, even with the COVID and everything. So we were pretty active. There was a lot of infrastructure money that came out specifically with relaunch and in response to some of the problems that COVID caused. And there was a lot of infrastructure type stuff. But the ones that I'd like to highlight is the Alberta Central East Water Project, and the final tranche of money got approved for that, and that's $34 million to get water over to Paradise Valley, Dewberry, and Clandonald. So that'll be a nice completion of that project. The other one is Lakeland College got $17 million, and that was as a direct result of response to the pandemic. So they're renovating their mead building, which will make their classrooms for agriculture, human resources, and environmental sciences more productive for them as well. And then locally around Lloyd, there was we got 6.6 million, 2.2 million a year for 3 years going to the Thorpe Center, and the Thorpe Center is almost full, or if not full, it's very close to full. So that was really nice. Like they just had real funding problems, and it was a change on focus from harm reduction to recovery that helped do that. And then we had some more money that we gave to residents in recovery. It kind of fills in a few of the gaps that Thorpe didn't do. So that was addictions and mental health that were being dealt with there. So those are just a few of the highlights that I thought it'd be interesting just to make a point of.
Absolutely. And of course, this year has been very different, of course, as you mentioned, with COVID. What are some, I know we talked to you a while ago about what you've been hearing from the Vermillion, Lloydminster, and Wainwright constituencies and those people there. So what are some things you're still continuing to hear? Because I know there's lots of issues when it comes to, the economy and healthcare and stuff like that. So just touch on maybe what you've been hearing up until since we last spoke.
Well, healthcare, of course, with COVID, it's been just, back in March, you were making decisions the best you could with what you had. The models at that time were suggesting we might face, 30,000 deaths, and so you went after things and did some restrictions on people's movement and being locked down in businesses, and now we're learning as we're going. And one of those changes that was interesting is. The Premier actually said this too. We actually made a mistake by closing down mom and pop shops and keeping the big box stores open for groceries, and it turned out that was a mistake, and that's why we're not doing that at this point. The other thing that happened out of that was of interest was I was on the committee. It was a select special committee. Reviewing the Public Health Act, and it had been amended a few times in the last number of years, but it had never been fully reviewed since 1910. So we took a look at that, and with all the restrictions that we put on because of COVID-19, we got a lot of complaints about civil liberties and and people's rights, like how can you do that to us? And so we reviewed it, and that was reflected in some of the changes that are happening. Bill 10 was passed in the spring, and based on the recommendations coming from that committee, we're probably going to repeal Bill 10 this coming spring. And the other one for people that are interested, it was the Public Health Act did from the start have the capability for the government to do mandatory vaccinations. And a recommendation of our committee on that one was to eliminate that and take that out of the Public Health Act. And one of the reasons was Dr. Hinshaw had said, look, it's never been used. I can't see a situation under which we would use it. So we said, well, if that's the case, why don't we take it out? And so I think that recommendation is being taken seriously and will probably be dealt with this coming spring. So those are some of the interesting things with regards to that. The other one that's, and this is a bill we're working on right now, is Bill 46, which is the Health Statutes Amendment Act. And it's relative specifically to Lloydminster, because forever there's been a problem with getting information to the hospital and because of the border and all the problems that's created. So this bill, if it gets passed, will work towards us sharing the information out of province with Saskatchewan, and should solve those problems. I know as soon as I got elected, the mayor brought it to my attention, the seniors group brought it to my attention, and there was a lot of people that were concerned about that and brought that to my attention a number of times. So this health minister has actually done the work to do that, and we're running into resistance from a privacy perspective, but but I expect we'll pass it and we can finally solve this long-term problem that's been happening in Lloydminster.
And lastly, just one of the final points here, Garth, before we wrap things up here. I know earlier in the summer it was announced that oil and gas companies will not be property taxed. I know rural municipalities across Alberta have been feeling that effect, including the county of Vermillion River. So what's the latest forefront on that?
Yeah, that was a fairly hot topic. It was oil companies were, the way it used to work, they got taxed at a certain level and stayed like that regardless of the productivity of the well. And so it got more and more expensive as the well got less productive. So they wanted that reflected somehow. And so but the impact on the counties, and it was going to be significant. Like over half of the revenue that comes to the county of Vermillion River comes from oil and gas. And down in Wainwright, the MD Wainwright is around 70%. So, it's a big deal if these guys stop drilling wells or if it's just not economic for them anymore. So the new minister, when she came in, Minister Lard, really did a great job. And she said, look, for new wells, we'll get a three-year holiday on that. And we're going to reflect a lower tax rate on older wells. So it's a stopgap. We still need to deal with this issue. We need to figure it out on an overall basis. But this bought some time and satisfied the RMA, the AUMA, and the oil companies as well. So I think that was a good trade-off. And from my discussions, the oil companies and the counties and MDs, they're pretty happy about that.
Well, Garth, I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for joining us on this recap of 2020, and hopefully 2021 goes better, not only for the province of Alberta, but just for the whole country in general. So thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for having me.
Furniture set and design supplied by Furniture Gallery and Furniture House, downtown Lloydminster.
Welcome back. We chatted with the Mayor of Vermillion about their highlights of the year, their internet service project, and how they adjusted throughout the pandemic.
I'm speaking with Vermillion Mayor Caroline Mccauley. How are you today?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm very good. Now, with this past year, what sort of highlights have happened that you'd like to talk about?
Well, we've actually had quite a few great highlights. So we've certainly had a lot of new businesses come to our downtown core and to our mall. So we've had a lot of new entrepreneurs bringing small boutique types of businesses to our community. So that's been great. We've seen an expansion of the agriculture sector in our community. And so really having a solid presence for them, that's been great. We've been able to have McDonald's come to our community, so they will be starting to dig in our community, developing a new prototype for freestanding McDonald's. We'll be the first in their franchise with this new model, so we're quite excited about that. So as much as COVID certainly has been a big topic over this past year, we've seen a lot of really great successes in our community.
And as you said, yes, the biggest thing in 2020 was, of course, the global pandemic. How did Vermillion adjust with this obstacle? Are there any positives or negatives you'd like to talk about?
Definitely. So when the first round of pandemic came through our community and there was a lockdown, we had to pivot as a community to say, how do we support all those small entrepreneurs, those new small businesses that we had opening? And our economic development officer worked to develop an online festival. So we were the first in the province to really develop this concept of an online festival, supporting our businesses to get online, having full days where we would feature several of our businesses for a half-hour segment. They could walk people virtually through their store and display their product. And we actually won an award, a national award, and also a provincial award for that initiative, and we're recognized by Travel Alberta. So obviously it was new and innovative. So we're constantly looking for ways to, how can we support our small businesses? How do we bring people to our community, but also how do we ensure that our community feels safe for our residents and for those visiting our community?
And was there lots of support in the community with residents when dealing with COVID-19?
Absolutely. So, certainly we saw a lot of support. I think some of it was just getting that recognition from residents. What can we do to support our local businesses while we're in this pandemic? Because it's so new for all of us. And so it really was saying, hey, this is some of the things you can do. And we really saw our residents step up to the plate and support our small business, which was really great.
And as you were speaking a little bit already, with such an impact on local businesses as well, how has Vermillion supported each one to keep them going throughout the pandemic so far?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so really it was, that through that online, and then as soon as the restrictions were lifted, our businesses definitely saw a resurgence in their customers, and actually had a very good summer. So where they were quite successful, and that was really great to see that support for our local businesses.
And I also want to talk about how the town of Vermillion was getting ready to launch their own internet service. How has that been going so far? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So yeah, I don't know how I could have forgotten that piece. So it was something that came in our last election time. We were reaching out to the business sector when we got elected and really spoke to them about what were some of the gaps and needs that they had. And our internet providers here are quite inconsistent as to how they provide service across our community. So a study was done last term looking at what is the current service provider level of service and what would it take to provide better service. And so we've been working with that. We have some innovative technology that's come out of the US that we're trialing here in our community. And we have trialed it in our industrial sector along 47th Avenue. And we've been quite pleased, as well as the businesses have been very pleased with the service that's been provided. So it's kind of ironic that we were launching into this just as before COVID even hit, and then COVID just really made the importance of broadband and internet connectivity, just brought that really to the forefront. So a little ironic that we had kind of gone down this path before COVID even hit, and then it just became what we needed to do to support our businesses.
And could you expand on what plans you have for Vermillion next year for 2021?
Yes, so we launched our app just in the fall or in the late winter. So we are totally revamping our web page. What we'd like to do is have better engagement with the community. That's probably one thing I can speak to. We hosted an outdoor community engagement event, and actually had fairly good community participation. So that's something we're going to do more of, is try to host some of these outside, because we really felt that people still want that face-to-face contact and be able to ask the questions. But just was really challenging with COVID and all the restrictions we've had. We're going to continue, I think, to explore ways as to how we, again, engage our community in terms of our council meetings, so keeping those live streamed. I think that's going to be really critical. Again, encouraging, we'll have McDonald's opening hopefully by September, October, so that will be great. Looking at that opportunity, continuing to expand our broadband into this coming year into our community, so expanding it broader where we can. And really looking at how do we work with our residents, how do we work with our county residents as they seek services in our community as well. So building on those relationships.
And I want to end off with asking if there was a lesson you've learned or a message you'd like to give out about what 2020 has really taught you.
I think probably the biggest lesson is how we have to be kind to each other. I think what happens is when we get really stressed, we all get a little bit on the testy side and we're less gracious. And I think now more than ever, we need to share grace and kindness. And every one of us has a different story to how COVID has impacted us in terms of relationships, being able to connect with family and friends, maybe loss of employment, work stresses. Everyone has a story. And so I think just being kinder to each other and just letting more things just go, not taking offense so quickly. I think those are some of the lessons. And so it really becomes the human lesson, right? Like it's how is we as humans treat each other better during times when we're all stressed.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining me today.
As the new year rolls around, soon we will see a new NCAA football national champion. Evan Kenny and Eric Bay look at the college football playoffs and pick winners for a handful of bowl games.
Well, as January 1st rolls around, so does the college football playoffs. The NCAA football playoffs obviously are kicking off here. Joining me today to break this down is Eric Bay. Thanks for taking this time, Eric.
Yeah, some big games here coming up.
So I guess let's just focus first on the college football playoffs. In the Sugar Bowl, Clemson will be taking on Ohio State. Clemson was 10-1 with their only loss this season coming to Notre Dame. That was when quarterback Trevor Lawrence was out due to COVID issues. Eric, who do you think is going to win this game here?
Yeah, I think it's Clemson. Obviously, they've played in a few matchups here, Ohio State and Clemson, over the past couple years in the playoff. But I think Clemson here is just a much more dominant team. You look at last year's Ohio State squad, They lost a lot of pieces on defense, and that secondary is still a little bit suspect. So I think a team with all the weapons that Clemson does have, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Amari Rodgers on offense, and then not only that, but their defense is outstanding. So I really think it will be tough for Justin Fields to be able to put up yards, and I know they did put up some big numbers in the Big Ten championship against Northwestern, especially a guy like Trey Sermon who had 331 rushing yards that game. But against a big front four like Clemson, I think it's going to be very hard to put up those numbers again and do what they need to do to win this game. So I think it's definitely going to be Clemson in this one.
Eric, that was sort of leading into my next question there. That front four for Clemson, when you look at the defensive line, how big are they going to be in this game and really just controlling what Ohio State does on offense?
I mean, it's huge. That's really where it all starts, and where you have to win that game is at the line of scrimmage. And I think those big guys on the line for Clemson are going to be huge. And the thing is, too, they're just so young and so talented. And not only that, but they have a big linebacking core behind them, too, that kind of has that veteran presence, able to read offenses and make those adjustments as they need to be done. So I really think this is just a top team from top to bottom, and maybe other than Alabama, the most complete team I think we saw in college football this season.
Now going to touch on Alabama, as they will be playing in the Rose Bowl against Notre Dame. Alabama, of course, 11-0 this season, where Notre Dame was 10-1 with their only loss coming in the ACAC championship game. Of course, a loss to Clemson, 34-10 there. Does Alabama run away with this one in your mind?
It depends what your definition of a runaway is. I think a 14 or more point loss is kind of a runaway in the playoffs. So I think it does get to that point. I mean, you're looking at a Notre Dame team that did lose by 24 to Clemson, a healthy Clemson team with Trevor Lawrence this time around in the ACC championship. And I really think that's what's going to happen here this time too. Notre Dame was pretty handily dominated, I think, after the first maybe 10 minutes of the game. Couldn't get much going on offense. And I see kind of the same thing with Alabama. Maybe not the same defense as Clemson has, but some good pieces, including Dylan Moses in the linebacking core. And this might be the best wide receiver class of any team in the nation, even after losing Jalen Waddle. I mean, you look at what they have there with Devonta Smith and John Mechie III. And I mean, Mac Jones has been outstanding. Not to mention Najee Harris in the backfield, who's just been an absolute bruiser this season. So while Clemson might be the most complete team on defense, Alabama might be the most complete team on offense here in this Final Four.
Yeah, Devonta Smith could be the first wide receiver to win the Heisman Trophy since 1991. I mean, not the best chances for him, but obviously a great player. And Najee Harris, almost like a poor man's Derrick Henry in that physical big back there. Now, Eric, I know before the playoffs were announced for college football, there was a little bit of debate who that fourth team would be. And even when you look at Ohio State, if they should be there, what are your thoughts on Notre Dame and Ohio State, just being in those top four there?
Yeah, I think Ohio State, obviously, they only played 6 games, but I think they did what you needed to do. Their only 2 close games were against ranked teams at the time in Indiana and Northwestern. Other than that, they blew out the competition, which is what was expected, had to be done. So I think they did enough to get in this year. Obviously, a very strange year. But for Notre Dame, I thought that as long as they kept the ACC championship close, they deserve to be in there, a 1, maybe a 2-score game. But as I've said before, pretty handily defeated by 24 points. So I thought maybe Texas A&M should slide in there. Obviously tough when they were idle, didn't play in the SEC championship, but I thought they should have been given a shot just based on what Notre Dame did against Clemson and what they'll have to go through again here to make it to a college football championship.
Eric, thank you very much for taking this time. Things should get exciting January 1st when the college football playoffs do start.
The Canadian Cattlemen's Association held its final town hall of the year, addressing 2020 and next steps. Eric Bay has more on the meeting.
COVID's impact on the Canadian cattle sector was a major talking point throughout the Canadian Cattlemen's Association town hall, but it wasn't all negative. The pandemic raised consumer awareness and had Canadians asking where their food comes from.
Canadian Centre for Food Integrity's most recent survey on public trust showed an impressive 12-point jump in public trust in the Canadian food industry. CCFI identified in their 2020 report that Canadians are confident in and optimistic about the food they eat and those who produce it.
Producers dealt with processing backlogs early in the pandemic as many plants were closed due to outbreaks. Today, the outlook is better, with cattle being processed at a normal rate.
We are, by the end of the year, I think maybe even going to be ahead of last year in terms of the value of our exports. And that just signals how important those markets are when we're moving through larger numbers of cattle.
As vaccines begin to roll out in Canada, the CCA is asking the government to give priority to food workers after frontline health workers.
These are individuals that, like everyone here, that still go to work every day, that are working either in the plants or working in our retail and food service outlets, who don't have the luxury of staying home but are out there doing this on everybody's behalf right now.
The CCA is continuing to prioritize COVID and its effects on Canadian cattle in the new year. Eric Bay, Primetime Local News.
Well, joining us here today is Lloydminster's own Jordan Pollard. Jordan, I know 2020 has been different for every musician out there, but in your perspective, talk about how this year has been for you.
Yeah, for me, I think that this year has definitely been a challenge. I won't shy away from that. I think that with everyone, we all have so many anxieties and so many fears for what's going to come in the future. And I've found that a lot with music, but fortunately, I've still been able to do what I love, not necessarily within performing, but I've been songwriting a lot, and my third single off of my debut EP has been doing really well on radio. I'm really excited about that. It was the first ever Stingray trending track, which I can't believe. It's so crazy. We're working on new music. I've been songwriting and co-writing with a lot of my friends and a lot of people in the industry, talking with lots of people, and I'm just really excited for what's to come and so ready for COVID to be over. Let's hope it ends soon. But yeah, this year's been good, and I think it's as I said, it's been a challenge, but it's something that I think I can grow from and learn from, and I hope that I can use all of these new lessons throughout my career.
You mentioned all the stuff that you're doing, like the trending track artist recognition, as well as you won the Sask Country Music Emerging Artist of the Year award. So how does your year look in your mind going into 2021?
It makes me excited. My second CMA award season is coming up, and I'm contending for for your consideration for some awards, which is super exciting. I love being a part of the Saskatchewan Music Association, and it's such a great family, and I'm excited to meet up with everyone again, and hopefully the awards are in person. That's very unlikely, but we'll see. And as music, as I said, I'm writing new music, working on releasing new songs, and I'm just really ready for 2020, and I'm really excited for New Year's to kickstart. I hope my best year yet.
In times like these, how do you stay motivated, being cooped up inside like a lot of us, to do things that will ultimately help your music down the road here?
I think with co-writing, I think co-writing and writing is something that I have to do for myself. And with writing, that's my way of kind of letting out my emotions. And almost in a way, I feel like I've been doing that even more so now during the pandemic, as I said, with all the anxieties and the fears of the future, not really knowing what's going to happen next. Just, there's so many things that have been going on. And I think that I don't really need encouragement or motivation to write. I think once live shows start up again, that's where all the anxiety is going to start, and I think that the motivation is going to have to kick in because I haven't performed in such a long time. But other than that, I just love doing what I do, and I think that it's my passion, and that will never change, and I will always have this inner drive to write songs and perform and practice music. So that will never change.
I know one of the things we chatted about last time was your new EP and the direction that you're going to take it in. So how far along would you say you are in that process right now?
It's coming along great. We've been going through lots of different song pitches, and as I said, I've been songwriting, and I just really want this album to be bigger and better than the last. The last one was really relevant to what I was going through at the time. I was ending high school, but now I've moved into my own apartment with my boyfriend. I'm going to college. This whole thing's happened, so I'm really excited for everyone to hear what we've been working on, and we got some tricks up our sleeve. I'm really excited to let it out into the world.
Hopefully by the summertime, every musician, including yourself, gets to go out and do live shows once again. I guess just also talk about the anxiousness that you have waiting until you get the green light for you to go out and perform live again.
I think a lot of us that we do feel that way, but in a sense, as everything, nothing ever stops, right? It's still, the world's still turning, and we're still working hard. And I know so many artists, they are just doing the best that they can, and they're kicking butt and staying motivated. And I have so much appreciation for people in the art industry as well, and TV and radio and everything. This is such a tough time, and I think we really need music more than ever.
And lastly, Jordan, any final thoughts that you want to add on anything that we've already talked about?
I just want to say thank you for having me again, and thank you to all of Lloydminster and area for being so supportive. Being a small town girl, coming from here, it's really is a reassuring feeling to know that your community is rooting for you. And I just want to thank you also, Connor, for always taking the time to talk to me, and I really enjoy it every single time.
Jordan, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Furniture set and design supplied by Furniture Gallery and Furniture House, downtown Lloydminster.
Stephanie Dobson joins us again here today on Primetime Local News. Stephanie is a lawyer and mediator in Lloydminster, and we've been doing a series talking about a number of aspects involving divorce and separation. Today we're going to be speaking about a workbook that can be used to kind of help everybody weed through everything. So Stephanie, welcome back. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
As always.
Well, Stephanie, let's talk about this Our Family in Two Homes workbook. I know we've had a bit of a discussion about it before, but can you really kind of get into what this is all about?
Sure. So the workbook is about 45 pages long, and so it's really divided into 3 parts. So it's intended to, number one, is to create a foundation for effective co-parenting. So building on things like learning what trust is all about and how to effectively communicate, how to learn about each other's conflict styles and that sort of thing. So the stuff you don't really want to talk about, but at the end of the day, as professionals, we know that that really sets the foundation for effective co-parenting in two homes. The second part is truly a workbook. So there's tons of white space inside the workbook. It asks you the myriad of questions that I would otherwise be asking you in my office on an hourly rate basis. So the reason I like it is because it really allows you to do things at home that you would otherwise be asked the exact same questions in my office. And the third thing is, so if you see just in the top, I've got here SK, so it's province specific. So I've got 3 different workbooks actually for Alberta, Saskatchewan, and I also do work up in the Northwest Territories. And so the idea is to provide legal information, the legislation for each province specifically. So instead of Dr. Google asking the questions, you would be looking in the book to get information on things like how do I build a parenting plan, a parenting schedule? What does child support mean, spousal support? How does property division work specific to my province?
So if there are families, Stephanie, that are working with you and are using this workbook, what's the benefit for them if they go through this as they're working along with you?
So really what I would say is it's about working on these things in the comfort of your own home. You know, having a glass of wine or a cup of tea and really being able to consider some of these things. You know, you can take a week or 2 or a month and really think through some of the ideas that and some of the questions that are in here, because otherwise you feel like you're in a bit of a pressure cooker being asked to answer some of these questions in great detail without a lot of that forewarning.
Now, Stephanie,
it also helps.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So I want to make this point. It also helps you because where what kinds of things that you need to negotiate. And so and so it really can help you to focus your conversations with your professional on the things that are really tricky for you and your co-parent, not just the things that you guys have already maybe worked out yourselves, but the things that are a little bit trickier.
Now, as a lawyer and as a mediator, can this workbook be used kind of for both situations?
Yeah, so I use the workbook in both services when I'm acting as a lawyer or when I'm acting as a mediator. And really the difference is whether I'm providing one workbook or 2. And so in mediation, of course, I'm providing a workbook to each family or to each parent. And in my legal practice, I'm only providing it, of course, to my own client. And so it's really helpful on both accounts.
Mm-hmm. Now, can families use this, Stephanie, if they want to do it like as a do-it-yourself option, or is it something where they pay for your services and then they get the workbook?
So the workbook, that's a really good question, Stacey. So the workbook is intended to be partly do it yourself and partly work with me. So when you purchase the workbook, you're actually purchasing it as a package. I call it the resource package. So you've got either 1 or 2 workbooks, whether you're working in mediation or with me as a lawyer, plus 3 hours of my time. And so the idea is to use those 3 hours to help you to further the things that you can't figure out on your own. And so it's not at all intended to be do-it-yourself, though it's more do-it-yourself than what I'd call full-service legal or mediation services.
Now, Stephanie, if people want more information on this workbook, what is the best way for them to get that?
So I've got this workbook, the information on the workbook on every page of our website, so henkadivorce.ca. You can also call our office, 780-875-2234. This workbook forms the foundation of most of my work with most of my clients. And so when you call our office, whether it's our intake staff or at your initial consultation, you will be getting the information about this workbook, and I'll be helping you to determine whether it's an appropriate resource for you or not.
Okay, well, thank you, Stephanie, for speaking with us again. And this pretty much wraps up our discussions for this year anyways, the year that was really kind of crazy for 2020. So I just actually like to take this opportunity to wish you a happy new year. And I know we'll be talking again in the new year as well. So maybe just I'm going to throw one more question at you. What are your plans heading into 2021 as far as dealing with clients and stuff? Everything kind of stays the same? Is that the plan, or you have anything spectacular in the works?
Well, actually, interestingly, just last night I was sitting sitting with a glass of wine by the fire, and I was actually just writing all of the different ideas that I had for development within 2021. And 2021 is really about creating more efficiencies to be able to help lower costs and to bring them more value for what they're doing. You know, this is such a hard economic time. We're not through the thick of it yet. There's more hard times to come, as we all probably are guessing with this pandemic. And the economic reality is that people don't save for divorce. And so my goal is always to help to create efficiencies and effective resolutions so that we can help to keep the cost down for families.
All right, Stephanie, well, thank you so much, and we wish you all the best in the new year, and we will speak to you again in 2021.